Hi, welcome to Amateur Hour here at Distraction Action. Can I read you a story? I like to read you a story. We've done this once or twice to varying effects, but I like to read you a story from my first book, Distraction Action, Volume 1, available now on Amazon, Audible, trunk of my car, bookshelf in my home. Sometimes I keep a copy in my pants. If only there was a way to post the link down below. Or if I could just kind of have like a picture in the top of the screen. Maybe this way, maybe that way. I don't know. This story is a lot of things. Mostly it's about drugs. It's about the first time I ever got high. But it's also a coming of age story, okay? So don't judge me. The name of this one is Rob-O-Lution number 9, Beards, Babes, and Buds. Buds like friends, but then buds like pot. Okay. Rob-O-Lution number 9, a take on a Beatles song, Revolution number 9, which factors into the story. I put a lot of thought into this bullshit. Published initially via Facebook on a private group page. The group consists of some of my very oldest friends from my Valley days. The page was created to be able to tell some stories from those days without having to worry about reprimands. This is one such story. It occurs to me upon publishing that I've now opened myself to those aforementioned reprimands. So let's just say this is a work of fiction. This version has been revised and expanded from its original posting. So, in case Big Brother is watching, or I should ever decide to run for public office, let me preface this. This may be fiction, this may be nonfiction. Depends who's asking and why. Wink. Sade said it's never as good as the first time, and I trust Sade's opinions on all things in life implicitly. The only thing she may not have accounted for was the passage of time. It's never as good as the first time, but as the years tick by, the first time becomes harder to recollect. I will do my best. If I recall correctly, I'd be about 16 years old at the time, and it's a boring weekend night. Now, things at that age are never truly boring, but as far as, man, this is going to be a story to tell type of nights, this was not one. It's me and at least 3 or 4 other friends hanging out at a mutual friend's house, and we decide to walk over to John's Deli. John's Deli, in Seymour, Connecticut, had the best bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches. If you know, you know. Of course, we only had just stepped out of the house when things took a turn for the more interesting. Across the street, there was a fight going on. 2 older dudes, they had full beards, were effectively beating the shit out of each other. These guys were going blow for blow. This was not your usual high school fight where you talk shit for a few minutes before you get in each other's face, then you ask, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? About 100 times before maybe somebody pushes somebody and then inevitably gets broken up. No, sir. This shit was violent. And I, for one, was thoroughly entertained. A bunch of other dudes, beards, were on the front porch a few houses down from where we had been hanging out and directly across the street from the brawl we were witnessing. Apparently, these were friends of the combatants. One beard pretty much knocked the other beard out and goes back to his friends on the front porch. Beaten beard gets up a little while later and stumbles off. We did not know these people. They had beards, bro. We had no reason to approach them. They were older, apparently violent as fuck. And wait, they have beer? And there's girls? Beer and girls can swing an entire nation. We debated amongst ourselves, but beer was winning. I myself was more than happy to take a Van Damme kick to the face if there was even the possibility of breasts. This logic, more or less, still holds true to this day. So, we approach the gentleman on the front porch. We introduce ourselves. We pay our compliments to the fighter. We tell these guys how bored we were until they all came along. A little bit of continued ego stroking and a few compliments later, and we're invited into their fight club, drug factory, or orgy, or whatever they might have had going on in the house. I was thrilled by the possibilities. First rule of orgy fight club? Well, I can't tell you. I may have said too much already. I believe one of our friends had the sense to say he wasn't going in. I believe we told him we'd see him around. We were going in. Pray for us, bro. I thought we threw some big parties. At 16, our parties were... bleh. At 16, our parties were, well, not lame, per se, but nothing like what these guys had going on. Girls, booze, music, and a ton of cigarette smoke. And they were hippies, or at least what I would have defined as hippies, meaning they had beards, ponytails, and tie-dyed shirts. At the time, I thought they were Beanie Baby collectors, as there were a ton of plush Beanie Bears around the house. I was not familiar with the term deadhead, and had no idea that that was a thing. I just thought they really liked incense and teddy bears. We mingled as best we could, not really knowing anybody. We stuck close enough together, so we were crazy, not stupid, to keep an eye on each other, but far enough to not look like we were trying to keep an eye on each other. We were tourists, trying to not look like tourists. I had just started flirting with an average-looking woman, but older, when one of my buddies calls me to the living room. He's calling out to all of us. I mistook the excitement in his voice for panic and rushed over. I figured I'd have to use those Beanie Babies as weapons and fight my way out of the house, and I was ready. But luckily, this was not the case. Everyone had gathered into the living room, and these guys had laid out the strangest-looking contraption onto the coffee table. The alpha hippie, I never got anyone's name that night, was asking had we ever smoked before. The room was silent. I pulled out my pack of cigarettes like a boss and lit one up. I slowly inhaled, and using my coolest cool guy voice when I blew the smoke out, making eyes at every girl around the room, I said, "Yeah, all the time." It was the one time an entire room laughed at me while I wasn't going for a laugh. Apparently, I had misunderstood the question. Turns out they weren't talking about cigarettes. They were asking if we had ever smoked pot before. We answered honestly with a no. I can't remember if we were all no, but I know I was a no. And all the beards and babes in the room seemed to delight in our no. Apparently, the plan was, they were going to get us high for our first time. We were going to smoke out of whatever Acme device they had sitting on the coffee table. At that time, I had never seen a bong. I now viewed everybody at this party not as individuals, but as the room. It was me, my friends, and this collective. The room assured us that it was very good weed. So much so, in fact, that they debated as to if they should let us smoke it. The room had genuine concerns that this particular weed would melt our brains. After much deliberation, the room ruled it to be safe, and an ambassador of the room stepped forward to explain the complex mechanics of using the bong. After much explaining, he felt he should handle most of the operations. All we had to do was inhale when he told us to do so. If I recall correctly, I was the last one up, and my competitive side is starting to show through. Each of my friends had taken what we in the biz call a monster hit, but only one such hit, and they had coughed to no end. I decided that at any cost, I was going to take at least 2 hits and do whatever was in my power not to cough. The room would be pleased, as would the babes, and in turn the breasts of the babes. So when our ambassador yelled, "Go!" I inhaled as deeply as I could. I then held my breath for as long as I could until somebody laughed at how red my face had gotten. I exhaled. I coughed like a bitch. I asked for another hit. I was advised against it. I practically demanded another hit and was obliged. Lather, rinse, repeat. And good God, I was high immediately. Later in life, I'd experiment with other things, and I'd relish the moment in between doing a drug and feeling the effects of a drug. That moment where you're questioning if it's kicked in yet. The anticipation of the high you know is coming. I had no such questions this night. I immediately started laughing. The room laughed along. I couldn't stop laughing. The room seemed to enjoy this. My friends and I reconvened in a quieter part of the house to compare notes. We were all high. This was all fun. These guys are all right. I don't remember much, surprisingly, of what went on in the house for the next half hour or so. I think I had tried to talk to some girls, but my mouth wasn't working. I'm not sure what language I was speaking, and I couldn't hear what they were saying in response. I tried to communicate using facial gestures, but I couldn't feel my face to know what I was saying. I am fairly certain that in trying to flirtatiously smile, I was probably baring my teeth, similar to how a dog might do before attacking. I lurched around the house, laughing at everyone and everything, until that knock on the door. Our friend, who had decided not to come along with us, was now here looking for us. There was a problem, and he needed to talk to us outside. We left the room and walked outside. Never before and never again has the summer night air felt or tasted so good. Apparently, another friend of ours had brokered some sort of peace talk between an individual we were having issues with and the rest of us. And this individual wanted to meet right now to either escalate the beef or squash it. Cool. This'll end well, I'm sure. But none of us are inclined to back down. We're to meet him on neutral ground about a block or two away. We decide to walk it, and it had just started lightly raining. Do you guys feel that rain? Oh man, that feels great. Fuck Eddie Rabbit. What does he know about a rainy night? So we finally arrive, and said individual is waiting on us. I'm just slightly leery of it all. I know this guy has a reputation, and he's older than any of us. He brought a car with him, for God's sake. But still, I find it all to be funny. His face is funny. His nose is funny. He may as well be a walking barrel of monkeys. Monkeys are especially funny. I'm starting to lose my composure, and around this time I notice everything is moving around in slow motion, and hearing everybody talk this way is funny. He's talking to us about whatever petty beef it was, about a girl, of course, when I realize my feet are melting into the streets, and this is beyond funny. And now I'm laughing, and this guy is getting mad. And I think at one point we're all laughing, and this guy is getting progressively angrier. So when asked, what the fuck is so funny, we proceed to fill him in on the night's events, including my melting feet, including his funny face. And it's funny to him. And like that, the beef is squashed. We all stood around conversing in the rain for a bit longer. Somehow, we end up all making fun of the very same girl we were just beefing about. I'm content to stand around and feel the rain on my skin, laugh at everything being said, and enjoy this slow-motion feeling. Looking around, I notice everything seems to be skewed at a 45-degree angle. I assume this to be a most unexpected side effect from the drugs. The sensation lasts for half the time it took to walk back to our friend's place. I realized much later that it wasn't the drugs. It was me. For some reason, I had my head tilted to the side and was walking around, head cocked like that was normal. I must have looked quite strange. So, we get back to our friend's house and proceed to raid the fridge, freezer, cabinets, and pantry. And we eat and laugh and eat and eat. I consider myself to be the funny one in any group. But one of my friends in particular has always been the funny one to me. And as high as I was, I had legitimate concerns that he would have me laughing myself to death. At some point, he tells me he has a great idea. He brings out a radio and hooks up a set of computer speakers into the headphone jack. I lay on my back and he sets up one speaker on the right side of my head and one on the left. And as I'm laying on the living room floor, he plays the Beatles' Revolution No. 9. My brain has melted. The room was right all along. The song goes on for minutes, days, years, an entire lifetime. McCartney and Lennon are right here, man. The song ends and I happen to glance over in the corner and notice him doing a silly dance. I immediately start laughing, and when I try to point it out to the rest of my friends, he stops dancing and laughingly swears he has no idea what I'm talking about. They look away and he starts dancing again. I again try to point it out to the others, and when they turn to look, he stops. This went on for way too long, and it just kept getting funnier. To this day, I'm fairly certain he was dancing, but I can't be sure. He still denies it, I still swear by it, and I don't think either of us would have it any other way. That first time opened the door to many more times, but Sade knows how everything else compares to that first time. It just doesn't. And of course I had a few more times with a few more drugs, but those first times will have to wait for another time.